Great to see you all. Hi, Karishma. Hi, Kelvin. Hi, Hugo. Feel free to unmute so we can hear you all as well. And before we get straight into your amazing stories, because I want to spend a bit of time just retracing your steps to how you got from where you were with an initial idea or situation in your life to what you're working on now, why you're so motivated and passionate about it. But before we get to that, a couple of warm-up questions to help us get into this. First of all, what's a favorite impact startup that you currently want to shout about? And secondly, a tool that's really helpful in your current business that's made a difference to your everyday life. So that could be a tech tool, a community, a partnership, whatever it is, something that's helped your business. Kelvin, go.
Yeah, for me, it's a small startup called GPT-0. And this guy from Princeton University that saw after ChatGPT was introduced how many people are going to lose their jobs. So he came up with this small product that basically can tell you whether a text or content, a student's essay has been generated by generative AI or not. And he basically built it in 3 days, went to sleep, and then wake up the next morning and his inbox totally overloaded with people supporting his work.
Hey, and it's like all good ideas. When you hear it, you think that's so damn obvious. I want to ask loads of questions about that project as well now, but we should all just to go and check it out ourselves. GPT-0 is and it's like basically fighting plagiarism and AI. Correct. Which is a huge problem on that side, but big opportunity for education as well. What about a tool for you?
I have to say, I have to admit, like Fiverr has been an absolute lifesaver for me, more when I started the business, but to a lesser extent today, but it's still a place where I go to pull out some resources to get some quick job done.
So give us a quick example of how you use Fiverr.com. This is by the way, we are not we're not shareholders in Fiverr, but we are fans, and Virgin does have a partnership with them. But how do you use it in your work?
So sometimes you need to polish a report, make it look quite jazzy, and you've got all the contents, and you just send it to somebody, and within like an hour or two, someone make it look really interesting for you. Or you're doing a piece of research, you need somebody just to kind of dig in, do a bit of market due diligence for you, and you just send it to them, and they do like 1 hour, and you have so much. And they're Fiverr as well, but you don't get everything for £5, and I would say you get what you pay for, and but there are freelancers essentially and some professional.
The diversity of what you can get, I think your examples are great, because the assumption is, oh, it's just for a little bit design or a funny video or whatever it is, whereas actually you're talking about, reporting, all these things before the bots take over. Great examples, Kelvin. Karishma, coming to you next. Favorite startup and tool?
So one of the impact startup that I'm very excited about is Seep. They do household cleaning stuff out of biodegradable materials. There's so much innovation out there on every aisle of supermarkets, but they're looking specifically on the house cleaning, like your dishwashing mats. They are looking at mopping stuff and everything, because those are the stuff which are being made from polyester and non-recyclable materials, and they're just piling up on the landfill. So these are the causes that I align with, and this is a female founder who's doing an amazing job of revolutionizing the cleaning aisle.
You've advertised them perfectly. Now, can you give us the brand name again?
It's called Seep, SEEP.
Seep. That's it.
Yeah.
It's like I love it. Startups now, like indie bands in the 90s, they're one words. You take the vowels out, and then, they're so much more interesting than Fairy Liquid, aren't they? Right. Yeah. Seep, good shout out. And what about a tool?
One of my favorite tools, which I have used recently, is WordTune. I use it for everything now because I'm a very technical person and I speak and I write in a very technical language. And sometimes you have to put a narrative out there which people understands. Sometimes you have to shorten up your word count as well when you're applying for multiple different accelerators, or you're applying for investors or anything. You just need to shorten it up, and WordTune does it for you very perfectly. And it's like you can get 10 edits for free, or you can pay for it as well.
So a great digital editor, WordTune.
Yeah, it's
nice.
like
Never heard of it.
Rephrases everything and shortens it up as well.
So comes back, you're like, why have you changed everything I've written? But it's better. That's good. WordTune. Thank you, Karishma. Hugo, what have you got for us?
I'm going to recommend, or my favorite sort of impact-driven startup is a brand called Yes Friends. They're a fantastic, sustainable clothing brand. T-shirts they started out with. They've now done a line of denim trousers. They're also doing underwear, but they're really affordable, which is obviously one of the key barriers for some people when it comes to sustainable sort of living and shopping. So they're kind of everything that we're all about at Canopy. So they're a fantastic company, and they're really well rated by Good On You, which is a fantastic kind of sustainability fashion rating site. Which the
fashion expert is nodding along, so that's a good sign.
About.
Give us the brand name once more, Hugo.
So that's Yes Friends.
Oh, Yes Friends. Okay, cool.
.co. Yeah.
Okay, we'll check it out. And what about a tool?
I'm going to say a fantastic community I'm part of called Copy Club. I would really recommend Copy Club. They're a really great community of other marketers. So if you're a marketer in this call, check them out. It's really affordable, and I get loads of value from it. They do loads of events as well. So they're really
that's
community.
it. I've heard so many good things about them. So thanks for sharing, Hugo. That's Copy, C-O-P-Y, Copy Club. Thanks for sharing all the links, Alice. And everyone else who's joined the chat. Priscilla said, thanks for having me. I'm the burlesque artist who asked Sir Richard Branson to be my Valentine. We have all the people in the house tonight. So let's turn our attention to your own journeys, and we'll start with you, Kelvin, then come to Karishma and Hugo, and spend a few minutes with each of you. What makes a startup so much more interesting is when you hear about the person behind it, and we have you here tonight. So we're going to make the most of you, if that's okay. And feel free to share as much as you like, but also, hold back what you don't feel like sharing. But Kelvin, take us a little back a couple of steps to when the idea or the journey towards MiiCare began.
Yes, it's the 14th of June, 2018. I get woken up by my it's very familiar sound. It's my ringtone. I open my eyes, or one of them, trying to kind of look and understand what's going on. And I see my phone ringing, and it's my auntie calling from Mauritius. It's 2 in.m. And my auntie never calls me, let alone at 2 in.m. from Mauritius. And that call was to change my life forever. And so before that, I left Mauritius after exiting a business which I started at the age of 13 to come and study in the UK. And I've been in academia for about 5 years, worked as a management consultant for about 20 years, working on some very exciting projects, advising the Mayor of London, the Olympics, Commonwealth Games, and then found myself working in the NHS on their digital transformation, really enjoying my my career. And that call that I received, essentially, that was my auntie to tell me that my dad passed away from a fall that happened 6 months ago. And so when my dad fell, he broke his hip, went to the hospital, and then things started to get really complicated then, and we just couldn't find a carer for him. He was bedridden, and my dad was special force trained. And now I joke about it, but I used to kind of be calling carers like every day, but they wouldn't last. And I'm thinking like, are they like really bad? But then someone then said to me like, the task you're asking us to do is like putting a nappy on Rambo. Like your dad basically is like the resistance we get. He doesn't want to comply, and one of them said to me, like, if you think you can do a better job, why don't you come and do it yourself? Now, my dad was in Mauritius, I was in the UK, and I couldn't be like just drop everything, go to Mauritius, just to be the full-time carer of my dad, because my wife was also going through a very difficult pregnancy with my second child. So because I couldn't be physically and mentally in the same place, I started to think, okay, I really need to have something that could help me really understand what's going on with my dad. And because I'm a data scientist as well, for me, I start with data. So far I can capture the data, I can figure out, and then I can help him that way. And this is when the idea of MiiCare was born. But what I was actually trying to do is find a way that I could be physically with my dad and physically with my wife at the same time. And MiiCare and the cube, which I have here, was almost that little device that was kind of representing me when I was not with my dad. And but then when my dad passed away, I took like 3 months off just to kind of figure out, because my dad was my best friend and everything you can expect from a dad, and just kind of figure out what I do next. And what hit me at the time was the fall could have been avoided. And you start to think about what can you do to avoid falls. And some people will say, well, if you have built a time machine, you can have prevented that fall. But crossed my mind, but I'm not that smart to do something like this. But what then very quickly came to mind is, okay, I can't change time, I can't go back. But what I can do is to do something that would prevent falls from happening from people that are living alone at home, and some of them have to stay on the cold floor in sheer pain and agony for like 4 or 5 hours, and sometimes the ambulance doesn't turn up because there is no place to take them on the hospital ward, who are actually now chock-a-block. And this is when I decided to create MiiCare, with the sole purpose that the pain that I went through with my family, nobody should go through that pain.
Kelvin, I thank you so much for sharing. I know it's such a hard thing to keep going back to, but the result is awesome in terms of the mission and the problem you're now solving. Tell us a little bit about that journey you've been on briefly, like with MiiCare, the product. What was the first version? How has it changed, and where are you at today?
Yeah, so first version was built on my kitchen worktop and 3D printed the electronics, like loads of wires, like spaghetti inside. But it actually worked. It did what I expected to do, and I finished building it on 2 days before I heard my dad died. So it kind of was put aside for 1 month, and after 1 month, I looked at this device and I thought, what an absolute waste of time. And you start to internalize failure, that you've done so much for the country, you've been involved in those top projects, but you haven't been able to do something for your own dad. So what I did, I donated the device to my local church, and I said, hey, if you know how to take that forward, because they also work very closely with AGK, then you don't have to ask for money from the congregation anymore, but there is something in there. And but then they basically kind of gave it back to me and said, no, there's only one person that can drive it forward. We'll support you, but you have to take it forward. And I was quite lucky to then have the largest NHS trust, who were building the first dementia village, to approach me and say, we've heard that you've given prototypes for free in the community, and they're all talking about it, and would like you to to bid for a tender we have for a technology partner for our first dementia village. At which point I said, okay, who else is involved? And they say Philips, Tunstall, and IBM. At which point I said, forget it. I'm a one-man band. This is like going to be like a slaughter. So they said, no, it's not about the company. It's about the function and the problem you're solving and how you're solving it. Because every older adults that we're talking about, they said, this is an amazing product. And which I bid and I won the tender. And that was the start of the journey. And they were not too bothered that the device was 3D printed, but it worked. And with that first order, I was able then to mass produce the product. And today we have capacity of producing 13,000 of these products. And our AI, her name is Monica, is also driven by ChatGPT.
Wow. So much in that story, Kelvin, that we could talk about for hours. But and congratulations for taking it from that point of pain to the impact that you're now having. How is the business today, and what's your biggest focus?
Yeah, so we've established ourselves in the UK 2 years ago. Microsoft saw what we were doing and invited us to apply for one of their programs, AI for Good. And we did. Today, we're still working with Microsoft. They are a very strong partner. They are helping us to spread our solution across the UK. But they also took us to Europe, where we are running our product in different languages as well. So the business is growing outside of the UK into Europe and soon in the US.
There you go. What a great story. Now, I'd like everyone to take a moment to check out MiiCare. It's MiiCare. I'm sure the Virgin Startup team will share the link in a moment. And everyone will have a story or a relative or a friend of a family who's been through something similar, and will know that this could help them. So from a very personal human point of view, this is a great thing to share, but also from a business point of view, I'm sure there's ways that we can support you as well, which we'll come on to, Kelvin. Thank you for that great introduction and story. I'm going to come to Karishma now. Again, working on an incredible mission and gigantic problem in the world, but where did it begin for you, Karishma?
So I started very early on in fashion. I think I knew when I was 15-year-old that I wanted to be in fashion business. I was like just excited by new clothes, lovely ideas, and just the creativity side of it. Though I was more technical as a person, and I found a route to enter the industry through fashion technology, which was looking into the manufacturing side of it, optimizing the supply chain. I worked in India after this, in Bangladesh, Oman, Middle East, quite a lot, and I was managing like 10,000 trousers per day and like 350 workers, all certified, really great factories, best of the best conditions that I was working for. And then I also had this, I had life which ran in parallel. So I had my family business, which was in recycling. So I thought, I want to do something in recycling as well. Like, I don't know what happens to textile when I was doing when I was added in manufacturing side of it. I was like, what happens when these clothes go and comes? Where do they go after that? So I always had this at the back of my mind. I wasn't really into sustainability, but I always loved fashion and everything. Then I moved to the UK. I studied entrepreneurship over here. And I was like, okay, cool. So I know my long-term vision is to have a startup, and I really want women to wear nice clothes. I don't want them to pay too much for it. I want them to be responsibly managed and just have fun with fashion. And then I started exploring the rental side of it, just purely rentals, which is when you source inventory from different brands and see how would that work, because that mission was there to empower women by offering them nice clothes which they can wear every time, and then they go into recycling and they don't even pay a lot more for that full price for it. So I explored the rental side a lot when I was in uni with Ellen MacArthur Foundation and multiple different places, just to understand what this circular economy is about and how do we make it better.
Just for anyone who's not familiar with that phrase, the circular economy, give us the definition.
So circular economy is basically designing the waste out of the system. Right now, we live in a linear economy, which is take, make, waste. We take from the environment, we make the product, we waste it, it goes into landfill. Then the transition is towards recycling economy, which we are a part of, which is still has waste in it, both tangible and intangible. And waste is someone else's problem, and it goes to something else.
Whereas that's like, for example, when we take all the recycling in the UK and it gets dumped in Turkey, and it doesn't get recycled.
It doesn't get recycled. It's not very well managed. There's a lot of leakage within that loop of recycling. Then in circular economy, what we do is we design the waste out of the system. We design products in a way that they are raw material for the next stage of life. Or they are, and not just product, the services as well along with it. So you have to look at both tangible and intangible waste. So if a dress is hanging in your wardrobe, it's a waste of its potential. We are still chopping the forest down to make another dress while we still have a dress in our wardrobe. So so that's circular economy. So coming back to that point, which was, I started exploring the rental side of fashion, which was the sharing economy. Spoke to, I think, 20 to 30 experts within the circular economy space back in 2018. And they told me rental is not going to make an impact. Like, it's not going to do anything, because the problem is how the products are being produced. You have to first make the product in a way that they either do a positive impact on the planet, or they are made out of, and positive impact can be anything. It is made out of recycled materials, so that way we are reducing the pollution which is out there, or we're using regenerative materials. That has to be there. Plus the product has to be built for rental itself. It doesn't matter if, it won't make a difference if you get 20 dresses from Zara and rent them out, because the product is not long lasting. You're just adding more to the carbon chain. So it's like, cool, I'll shut this down and shut this entire thing down immediately. So in 2019, I decided to shut the entire startup idea. Then I moved back to India to make okay, fine. So I'll make products out of regenerative materials. Let's see how that feels. And went on that journey and thought that, oh, it's too expensive. How am I even going to make sense with this? Because people are not going to be able to buy it. Like, it's great product. We're using materials like organic pea silk, where we don't kill the silk moth in that process. In a traditional one, it's boiled alive like a lobster. So what the silk moth does is it helps in restoring the biodiversity of the surrounding area just by organic practices, just like how bees help in pollination. A lot of insects help in pollination too. Just by that, we've been able to turn a barren land into oasis in just 7 years. So there are amazing materials out there. But I was like, oh, the product is itself very expensive. How am I going to be able to like make any impact with that? So I thought, oh, what if I created a brand where people could, rent if they want to buy it? Like, it's not going to be any use for me if it's standing in inventory or anything. It's much better if they rent it and there's a shared consumption around it. And then I took that idea forward and I spoke to a lot more experts, and they said, oh, that solves a lot of problems which are out there within the circular economy, because you're making the product in a way that it has a positive impact. Then you're using that product up. It's durable itself, built for renting, and then you take them back for recycling as well. So you just add one more line, which is, okay, make the product recyclable itself, because there are so many problems within the fashion industry, which I've seen myself. So that way, we're just starting from scratch, is making a product which is made out of regenerative materials, and it's designed in a way it's recyclable. Customer decides if they want to buy them or rent them. And then we take them back for responsible recycling when it reaches the end of life. So yeah, that's
truly circular, and which is fantastic from a mission and impact point of view. But from actually turning it into practice and a business perspective, it sounds really, really tough. How is it going?
So it has been very well. So we did first stage of testing. We made our platform up. We made the first set of collection. I really wanted to understand, because I was so early in my journey, and I thought, oh, we have to stress test it. I cannot only rely on experts on what they think. I need to go and talk to the customers themselves. So we made samples. We went to the pop-up shops. It doesn't cost anything to get a pop-up to be in pop-up market. You don't have to have an inventory for that, right? It's just, right, there are pieces on the hanger. What do you think? So women told us, oh, do you have a dress for that occasion? Oh, I have this much money. This is what you kind of like ask questions like, oh, okay, so what price? How much are you looking to spend? What's your budget like? And those kind of questions. So we kind of like figured out, okay, so you're looking for these kind of outfits in this price point, which aligns with your values. So that ways we did a lot of testing in different pop-up markets, online. People started saying, okay, fine, you don't have something that I want right now. Here's my size, here's my email. Once you're ready, come back to me. I'd really love to shop from you because I love the materials, because the material testing was very important for us. I wanted people to actually touch them, not think like, oh, it's just like a recycled crap. Like there's like a thing that people think, oh, it might be lower quality or something if it's recycled. So when they touch it, they feel like, oh, amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went on testing phase, we went on accelerator phase, then we went into fundraising phase. So we are fundraising at the moment to build the next set of collections based on everything that we have learned.
Wow. And yeah, anyone that's, I can see from a few comments coming, anyone that's spent any time thinking about, or let alone investigating or trying to help fix the fashion industry, knows what a huge issue it is, and it encapsulates so much of so many of the problems that we see in the world. And you've got to the core of the solution, which is really exciting, which is why we want so many people to back you. How can you, just final question for now before we come to Hugo, how can well, obviously fundraising is what your focus is, but what else do you need support on, and where can people connect with you and get involved and be part of the journey?
So I do need support in terms of people signing up to our waiting list. If you're interested, get up. Just go to our website, sign up to our waiting list. We'll plant a tree instantly for you. Our mission is to see a positive change, and as soon as you join us, we plant a tree. That's it. And I do need support in terms of connections to investors. If you know anyone, please let me know. Put us in touch. If you yourself are wanting to try it out with me, try the investment out, to get in touch. We'll be crowdfunding as well. So yeah, and anyone technical, because we have won a good grant from Innovate UK, and we're looking for a technical person to help develop the digital side of the business as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
There you go. Lots of opportunities. And as Alice has said here, you share a lot on your LinkedIn. Just briefly, why do you do that? What is that, just a therapy for yourself to get it out there, or is it genuinely help grow the business?
So I think I have like 3 different types of content that I put on LinkedIn. One is a rant that is always out there, whatever has happened, and kind of put my thought process out there. Second is I really want to see an impact in the sustainability space, circularity space. I want people to really know that this is not just a concept, it can really work as well. And there's a lot of depth to it. Let's not go, because I think I feel that, initially I started only with the rental side and I didn't see an impact and I shut it down. So if I had known more, so that's why I put out content for people to know a lot more about sustainability and circularity. Then the third is obviously the startup fundraise world of being a female founder and everything around that.
Yeah. The odds have been against you historically, right? But hopefully things are moving fast, and we need your leadership more than ever. Karishma, thanks for sharing. We're going to come back with more questions, but Hugo, jumping across, where did your journey towards building Canopy begin?
Yeah, interesting story. So we've all heard the story of Amazon being started in a garage, but forget that. Canopy.com was founded in a field. So my co-founder Thomas had spent the better half of a decade campaigning and talking at festivals for Greenpeace UK, the world's largest environmental NGO. And you can imagine the kind of thing he saw, the images we've all seen, like in photographs, in TV, in the news, fields of waste, like thousands of tents left behind at the end of every festival. And the majority of that ends up in incinerators. So Thomas started a company to basically collect and upcycle all those tents and camping equipment and give them a new lease of life. I came on board to help. So my background, we've been really good friends for years, like we met at university. But my background is in marketing and PR, including about 5 years in government comms throughout all of the COVID pandemic. So a lot of learning there. So I was bringing the kind of marketing and branding side of things. Wow. So we successfully worked our first festival. with a team of amazing people, about 30 to 40 people, I think it was, including some people who we just recruited at the festival. They just like loved what we were doing, and just like we're like, we'll stay behind and walk around this like apocalyptic wasteland. But yeah, so we collected about 85% of the leftover tents. So it's a real success, but we knew that we're sort of trying to solve the symptoms of a bigger problem, and that's that we need to buy better to begin with. We need to change our perception and the way that we shop and the way we live. So when the pandemic hit, it gave us a great opportunity. All the events, all the festivals were stopped. So it gave us an opportunity to sort of like reflect and think about that issue that we knew was sort of in the background and was sort of always sort of something we're aware of. So kind of returning to that bigger idea. And the problem is, you know, I think we've all felt it, is if you want to buy more sustainably, if you want to live more sustainably, you have to do the research. You have to go to like a blog or a site to read something online to learn about the issues. And you might not really understand those issues as well. You know, a lot of these things are very complex. And then you have to look for a sustainable brand, you know, for the thing that you want to buy. You have to look into all those green claims that they're making. A lot of them can be really confusing for most people. And after all of that, you have to check out on, you know, multiple different websites with different delivery, different sort of returns and all that kind of thing. And if you want to track that impact and understand what it really means, you know, in a quantifiable way, which, you know, people really do want to understand that and be able to track that over time, you have to download like a carbon calculation app, which works things out on generic transactional averages, which we're not really a fan of. You know, if you go to Tesco or something and you buy a shop, it will just be a really generic average, like it won't look at each product. Right. So we founded Canopy, the home for buying better. We bring all of those things all together under one roof. So sustainable brands, rigorously vetted by us, all the learning, all the education about those issues. And what's more, we've also built the Canopy calculator, which basically gives you access to powerful impact stats on the carbon emissions, the water waste, and the plastic waste you can save by buying that product on our platform compared to the mainstream alternatives. So we do like a comparison. So we're all about really like making it easier for everyone to buy better. That's really the main goal. But within that, I think it's important to say, like, our mantra is better, not best. You know, you shouldn't have to be a climate scientist to understand and to do these things. And you shouldn't have to be perfect either, because perfect is really the enemy of good. It should all be about kind of small steps and positivity. So that's what we're all about. We have about 160 brands sign up to sell with us, including Keep Cup, Wild Deodorant, Home Things, and many, many more. And like Karishma,
they pay for their premium spot in the pitch, obviously.
They're just... No, I mean, you know, Yes Friends, they're not actually signed up, but Yes Friends, who I mentioned earlier.
They will
mention them because I do want them to sign up.
Yeah, keep mentioning the people you want to sign up. You go really quickly, because the mission of Canopy and the journey that you and Thomas on, and your ability to communicate and sell this vision is so good, and the solution is very obvious. But it's like, I mean, like all the projects we're talking about tonight, it seems like an idea that probably quite a few people have had. I wouldn't it be great if there was an Amazon for a better way of buying, but pulling that off is super hard, because obviously you know there's a monopoly out there as good as, and so on. But how's the traction? How's it going on the steps towards that big ambition?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is something that we're always thinking about. I think a couple of things. We've had great traction. We haven't launched yet. We're launching in about a month or so time. So it's a really exciting time for us, where we're sort of putting all of that learning, all of that strategy, all the product build into motion. What we've seen is that, you know, overwhelmingly every year, no matter whether or not there's a recession or not, people care about this. It's really, really important. And it's really important that things aren't just sustainable, but they're kind of like verified sustainable, because we're seeing a lot of greenwashing in the industry. We're seeing a lot of these big players coming in. But what we're also seeing is that people feel guilty about Amazon. About a third of people feel guilty for using Amazon because of their ethical stance, because of their stance on the environment and on paying tax. So we know that people are really trying to move away, and about 40% of people in a recent study by a test said that they're looking to buy less from Amazon this year,
Yeah.
just because they feel it's not sustainable.
So the change is there. It's just helping people make it and making it as easy and convenient. I wanted to, Hugo, thanks so much for sharing. I wanted to bring Kelvin and Karishma back into this conversation and ask about the reality of where we're at right now. So we heard 3 amazing positive stories, got traction. We're all going to get behind you and do what we can to make them work. But we're also in a cost of living crisis in the UK and elsewhere around the world. And ethical, social impact, green has this perception of a premium price tag that's for a certain class of customer, right? Who can afford to or has the time and money to think about this. And as you just described, Hugo, like it takes a lot of effort, and maybe you're going to help us solve part of that, which is fantastic. But how do you find your customers, I guess, is like to get the sales in, because it is the pressure, and we need everyone to move across to these better solutions, whether it's in healthcare or fashion or shopping. So how do we get new customers? How do you get your message out to a wider audience and start to make this change? Kelvin, maybe starting with you, and then we'll come to Karishma.
Yeah, so our business model is purely B2B and B2G and B2B2C. And
B2G?
B2G, so selling to the NHS, business to government, selling
business
to the
government,
local councils, and so on and so forth. And we've not had any marketing done. It's purely been one local authority recommending to the other local authority, and this is how we've grown our business. But also, early on, we felt like you spend so much money into a marketing campaign, and then suddenly get all these orders, and you cannot fulfill those orders. So you burn so much cash, but not being able to deliver. But then through our referrals of our existing customer, we thought, oh, that's great. We're not having to spend a lot of money in marketing. Costs of customer acquisition is like £56, which is great. And
so how much does the product cost? It's fascinating to dig into the numbers a little bit. So £56 to acquire a customer sounds to like the digital marketers like, wow, that's expensive. But tell us about the product cost.
So the overall product cost is £300 inclusive of VAT, and then it's a subscription of £1 a day that you get notified if your elderly parent is not feeling okay or didn't have their breakfast, didn't get out of bed, and you get a call, and our AI would basically ring on their behalf if they've had an incident. And most of the time, our AI will ring next door neighbor because they're just next door. It doesn't take time for them to turn up, and also you don't want to ring an ambulance to come in and see actually Mrs. Megan fell asleep. That's why she's not responding. But next door neighbor would knock on the door and basically realize the person is okay. But something else that we had to do, because a lot of our customers, they struggle to pay our users, not customers, because customers are the NHS, but our users are really struggling to pay their gas bills, to put food on the table. And so we looked at those groups that are generating a lot of data, which to them is basically useless. And then we looked at research organization that can advance research in the area of geriatrics if they had access to anonymized data. Mm-hmm. So we then started to become almost like an agent for our older adults, to say to them, if you're interested to sell your data, anonymized data, to research institution, then you can make some money. And that has to be done within the context of GDPR, or it's not GDPR anymore, it's the UK Data Protection Act. Yeah. So if you harness this properly, you are also able now to allow your end users to generate some revenue from their own data. And this revenue is used to pay gas and electricity bill, or sometimes they want someone to come around and clean their house, a bit of pedicure, manicure. So
yeah, it's an income stream which is much needed. It reminds me of this great startup. My shout out tonight called Currently, which is a climate weather startup community, but started on Twitter and now it's a proper service that really it's got all these meteorologists around the world, often just people like who are passionate about weather, who are going out collecting data and sharing it to help people adapt to climate, extreme weather, etc. And their platform is now generating revenue for these people as a way of turning something that they did because they cared about it to something that can now help support them. So these are the models we get excited about. And with yours, Kelvin, I want to come across to Hugo, but just tell us briefly why, so often in healthcare and other industries, you see these great innovations and technologies like yours, like MiiCare, serving those that can afford it, right? Because it's a premium product and it costs a lot of time and money and great skill to create it. Whereas the vulnerable, who you've just described, who really need it, don't often get access to it. So how do you stay focused on that? Because there must be a temptation let's just focus on the wealthy because that's where we'll make the most money.
Yeah, it's interesting you say this because the deprived areas and where there's a lot of health inequality is quite close to our heart. So we basically look for grants. We basically get charities to sponsor some of our users, so that the users themselves don't have to pay for it. And we go to the extent of getting our AI to talk with different accents. Our AI can today talk 7 different languages because you need to remember you're engaging with a generation that the language, the culture is very important to them. And that's why when we say we talk different languages, it's not about translation, but it's about localization. So we'll see which part of the country they are, and then what's the most dominant, let's say, the native language, and we inject some of the native languages in there just to kind of get them to build that trust with our AI, and it just works.
And it works. I'm not surprised you've got an Innovate UK loan or grant, because the amount of innovation going on in your startup is really inspiring, Kelvin. Thanks for sharing. Hugo and Karishma, I can see you're back. Hugo, tell us a little bit about this tension between the perceived premium price of ethical and green living versus the cost of living crisis and what we have to do to bring millions of people across.
It's such a good question, and it's something that we're always thinking about because it's close to our hearts. We're our own customers as well. We're not from wealthy backgrounds at all. It's something that's really been a challenge in raising investment in that world. It is a world where money talks, but I won't get into that. But so it's really important. So just on recognizing that as a point, I think one thing to mention is that we talk about buying better. Now, buying better doesn't just mean better for the planet. It often means better for your wallet over time. I mean, how many times have you bought something cheap, maybe on Amazon, maybe somewhere else, and regretted it? Either because it broke, just plain broke, or didn't quite do the thing you bought it for, or just didn't deliver, and it sits in a drawer, or you don't use it, and you end up having to buy something else to replace it. I think it's a shift in mentality for sure. But I think it's important to mention that because it is a bit of a kind of perhaps a bit of a myth, to some degree. I do think there is still a premium price on it to some degree, though.
Well, that's the point. It's proving it through evidence and stories, right? Which is what you're doing.
I think that's the job for us as marketers. That's my job, is to tell that story. But also things are changing. I talked about Yes Friends earlier. They sell that a great sustainable organic certified organic cotton t-shirt for £10. This is changing. You don't have to spend £50 on the t-shirt anymore. Sustainability is becoming more mainstream, and that's only going to happen as legislation pushes for that to sort of really fueling that fire.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing 100%. And also, as we've heard from Karishma with the circular economy, and it's a lot is shifting in this direction, but it's bringing the externalities of making everything that have not been factored in, the forests that have been ripped apart, the oceans that have been destroyed, and that we're so used to like hopping on flights and buying this for plastic crap for next to nothing, and that convenience, like disease, is really what we have to help turn the tide on, which is what's so challenging, which is why I think these business models that you're all doing are so crucial, because they're solving it as well as communicating it. Karishma, I want to come to you on the circular economy. Is it possible that the circular economy can be affordable to all in the future?
I think it can be. I've seen economies of scale. I've worked in economies of scale. I've produced products which are less than $1 or less than $5, say. It is very much possible. The thing with economies of scale, it relies on a very consistent or a stable market. When you have constant supply of cotton coming in, you have a constant supply of labor, you have constant electricity, everything is stable, that economies of scale works. Now what circular economy does is, or looks into, or the entire thing about sustainability is, we don't have a constant supply. We have a limited supply. Things are going to run out. The cotton where we are growing it, the water is running out already. We are seeing droughts coming in. We are seeing flood coming in. You have a lot more fluctuation in the prices of cotton, of different materials, crude oil, which makes polyester, everything fluctuates, right? So I think the amount that we have produced, which is out there sitting in landfills, in wardrobes, never sold, never worn, in all sectors, if we are to put them in a loop, we can bring a stability of price in there, right? So imagine there is about 100 million tons of textile in landfills every year, which are being burned. Like it's about a truckload of clothes which are being burned right now, which may be out of style, maybe they are worn, they are more expensive to repair and be worn. There can be multiple reasons why clothes are not being worn, but if we can bring them back into a recycling loop, and we can consistently make products out of them, we can get out of a lot of problems that are leading to unstable market, or will lead to unstable market. They say that 55% of profit margins are going to be eaten up if sustainability is not looked into by retailers and brands.
Do you know what I love about talking to impact entrepreneurs? They're so much more interesting than just people trying to sell shit fast, because you just like the expertise that you're all sharing tonight, and Karishma, on the circular economy, is I just want to listen to a whole sort of university course led by you, which I'm sure one day when you retire from your startup you'll deliver on the circular economy. Now we're running out of time, which I wish we weren't, but I'm going to try and throw in a few more quick questions. So the tension between communication, and you've just started to mention this, Karishma, between the devastation of what we're going through right now on planet Earth, whether it's the impact of the stories like Kelvin, about Kelvin's father earlier that's going on, whether it's in the fashion industry, whether it's across all areas of consumption like Hugo's talking about. How do you, or the three of you, balance this like real heavy negative like reality that a lot of us are waking up to, versus the optimism of your solution and what we can all do to try and fix things? How do you balance that in your communications and your brand, Karishma?
I think we're still in the process of exploring that. Something that we have learned is you cannot really talk too much about negative, or you kind of put customers away, because obviously you need money to survive as a business as well. You need money. Finances are going to be the biggest dictator of your entire future, of your startup or whatever your vision is. So you cannot really communicate about too much of negativity, like, hey, one truckload of clothes are being burned, the most sustainable product is already in your closet, you don't need to buy. Those kind of messages will work against you. What you really have to talk is the positive side of what you can deliver. Obviously there is an activist side of marketing, and there is a very optimistic side of marketing. Both work. You have to know as a brand or a entrepreneur or as a founder what your personality is, what your value is, I had a long conversation with my writer yesterday, and I was like, hey, I don't want to be like anti this or anti that. I really want to talk about, there are so many good things out there. Can we talk about that? I only have a space of 10 words, and we are like using 4 words. We are anti fast fashion. Like, I've lost 4 words over here, guys.
It's really hard, right? I love your open mindset towards this, Karishma, and it sounds like you've really found a great line anyway. And this is the advice I think to people listening is you've got to figure it out yourself. There's no playbook here. Hugo, you're at the heart of this. You know, that lovely mix of your kind of comms expertise with an activist co-founder. How are you figuring out how you get this message across?
It was one of the things that I looked at, like the minute I joined. And we started working on Canopy. It was like, okay, what is this? What is the identity? What is it all about? And you have to start with that to work out the rest of it. And from the beginning, positivity. I mean, it's one of we have like 3 core values. Positivity is one of them. Leading with the carrot, not the stick. You know, behavior change happens by incentivizing, not by punishing, degrading people for their choices. I'm not going to tell you off for shopping on Amazon because it's part of a lot of people's lives. You know, it's not the way we do things. But I think you touching on the activist thing there, I think that's an important thing. So for us, you know, a big part of how we reach our customers, coming back to that last question, will be about doing campaigns, working with partners. I'm talking to you now for a Virgin Startup session. You know, that's made possible because we love Virgin Startup and we've continued that kind of partnership. But we're also working with like Surfers Against Sewage, which is like the leading charity in the UK on water quality and pollution, on some exciting campaigns this year. So I think there's definitely some real positivity that you can find in that activist sort of mindset and those sort of doing real work out in the world always gives you a sense of
and it goes
motivation.
back to the classic example of like what makes your brand remarkable. You know, the purple cow idea, like when you're going on a train and you know, when you don't talk about the cows in the field, but then there's a purple one, suddenly everyone's going, hey, did you see the purple cow? It's like the activism side of what you're all doing and the mission side of the change maker kind of approach, whatever label you give it, is the remarkability factor as well as a great
when the world zigzag as,
exactly.
As I think it's John Hegarty said.
There you go. Kelvin, how do you balance that you shared a heartfelt story with us earlier about your father, and that's the background, but how do you balance the painful stories that people are going through with the solution and the optimism of your product and your service?
Yeah, I think sometimes, you know, I mean, listen, for me, it's kind of simple. When I hear in the UK alone, 9,000 people are falling, and but then at the end of the day, they lose their life, like 9,000 in a year. That's like 25 people dying from falls that can be avoided. And you think about it, the reason why they're still suffering is because the state of the healthcare system. And you know, you can talk about the crisis of healthcare, but for me, it's about trying to use that same energy to go, okay, fine, but what is going to be your contribution in this? Because you can think about how many people are falling and dying versus how many lives are you saving on a daily basis. And for us, when you're preventing falls and saving lives, as a data scientist, you don't have data points to say today I've saved that many lives. But what do happen a lot is our end users or their children would write to me or sometimes ring me and say, Kelvin, I've made the time to talk to you because you've just saved my dad's life today. Because the AI identified something wrong, we sent him to A&E, and then they've detected arterial fibrillation, for instance. So these are what kind of your feedback you're getting. That, yeah, you can't change the world like a click of a button, but you can play a small contribution that could result in some seismic change that then, you know, everyone can do the same. And it's about also, for me, inspiring some of the younger generation. So I spend a lot of time mentoring students from Stanford, Berkeley, and I do this pro bono because I want to see talented, very talented people helping to solve the problem that we are solving. So we're creating a movement.
Oh, I love it. And we run out of time, but I'm still going to ask a final question because you three are brilliant. And there's lots of people saying how fantastic it is to listen in. My final question, you may have just answered, Kelvin, which is when things are hard, I mean, you're very positive people and change makers have to be. But when things are hard, when you're having a crap day, for whatever reason, what is it that drives you to keep working on this? And I'm assuming it's messages like the one you received, Kelvin.
Yeah, I think for me, there was one of the days when I was in Mauritius, and my dad was having his dressing done, and I was holding his hand while the nurse was kind of chopping bits that was infected, and I looked at my dad and I said, like, "Are you okay?" And very bravely he squeezed my hand slightly, with the tears rolling down his cheek, saying, "I'm okay, but promise me you'll help, that nobody has to go through the same pain." So every time that picture, it feels like it happened yesterday. That comes to my mind. I get up, I say, I'm going to get through because I'm doing it with purpose.
With huge purpose and none of the bullshit that sometimes we hear. And kudos to you and your dad for inspiring you to do it. Thank you for sharing, Kelvin. Hugo, when you're in a pit, when you're like a trough, when you're like, even Thomas can't pull you out of it with all his optimism, like, well, what helps you keep going, keep saying, I'm not going to throw this in the bin?
I don't know how I can follow that. That's really emotional, really lovely. I think, I think we've all got, everyone on this panel has a really valid reason for what they're doing, and it's bigger than us, right? And I think it's always good to remember that and sort of set aside your ego and go, like, objectively and stand aside and objectively do this, because I think as a founder you really need to do that every day. You need to kind of step aside and look at things objectively. I want to just plug a phrase which I absolutely love, which is one of my old bosses. And this doesn't work if you work in healthcare, but in marketing is definitely a world where you sort of, you get all stressed out and there's a lot of huge pressure in certain situations. And whenever those situations happen, you'd say it's PR, not ER. And it's just really good to conceptualize that, like what we're doing over here, like Canopy is really important. But as a marketer myself, it's PR, not ER. Is really useful to ground.
Yeah, it's really useful, but I think in a way that goes beyond that, just that saying, because yeah, of course, saving someone's life, the reality of that is what really matters, right? And saving nature is what really matters, because without it, we're all in ER and we're all dead, right? So that's the reality. But without telling the right stories, the right people at the right time, or getting them to ER by creating a moniker AI or a platform that allows people to discover great new products in the world, then there's too many people in ER. So I think PR's got this bad rep, whereas good storytelling is so important in all aspects, and we've lost some of that in modern life, haven't we? And you guys are bringing it back. So thank you for sharing that, Hugo. And Karishma, just to finish, when you're having a bad day, which I can't imagine you have because you've got such a lovely smile and spirit, but when you're having a bad one, what keeps you going?
I think there are two things. That is, first, I have seen that pollution and devastation, which every day, I have images of landfills that I have seen that are stuck in my head. Like, I feel that I really need to stop this. I have the knowledge, the talent, the courage, the purpose, the drive to do it as well. So I should be doing it. Like, I want to get rid of these landfills and the pollutions that I've seen growing up back in India. Second is, when I'm having a hard day, I remind myself of this quote, which changes the perspective, which is, who am I to not go through this? Am I like a big shot queen who will not go through this? Like, others have done this, other founders have been through it, be female founders, founders from diverse backgrounds, any founder who's starting off and facing challenges after challenges and discovering things that they did not know before. Who am I to not go through this?
Oh, it's really powerful when you really take it on board, right? Well, that's inspiring to hear as well, Karishma. Thank you, all three of you, for giving your time, but also your passion and emotion tonight, which takes energy. I appreciate it. Even here online, where we're not connecting quite the same way as we would be if we were in person together. But you've given a lot.